We all know most AAA gaming companies are absolute... what's the word I'm looking for? Scum. The fact that EA facilitates gambling via loot boxes, Bethesda releases unfinished buggy messes, and Nintendo still don't understand how the internet works. Yeah, all of these are quite well-known facts, but there's one company that truly doesn't get enough criticism for their bullshit. A slimy, unethical, rat's nest of shameless corporate suits. I am of course referring to none other than Blizzard Entertainment, or as I perhaps should say, Activision Blizzard. To say I despise this company would be an understatement beyond comprehension. In fact, I even thought about making a whole new series that was simply titled BAFS, standing for Blizzard are really fucking shit. Oh, sorry, forgot we're going to post this on YouTube. Don't want to anger our advertisement overlords. What I actually meant was Blizzard are really flipping silly. Yeah, that's what I meant. And I have to say, it's a very apt acronym, as it summarises pretty much what I feel like doing every time I hear that company's name. But I thought that was a little bit too over the top, even for me. So instead, welcome to the first edition of a new series I'm making, simply titled The Stupid Show, whereby I talk about things that have royally pissed me off. Blizzard has done something lately that really has pissed me off, and I actually think there's a greater lesson to be learned from this whole debacle.
World of Warcraft, baby! Yeah! My nipples are all hard and I'm gonna pwn noobs.
World of Warcraft, my favourite game of all time. A game I've made so many videos about that you'd think it was an ex-wife of mine that I can't get over. I truly do adore World of Warcraft, however. Or well, I should say I adored World of Warcraft, because as my Warfall series shall cover, though it may have been the bee's knees back in the day, today, it's absolute garbage. But you know, it's more than mere garbage. Rubbish, trash, shit, I could go on. I think World of Warcraft has actually managed to somehow ascend those mere terms into the realm of not just being an objectively bad game, but outright being a scam. But today I'm not even going to go into the likes of how Blizzard destroyed their star game with pay-to-win microtransactions, or even how they kowtow to totalitarian dictatorships and lay off their workforce like they're trying to get a high score. No, today I'm going to show you how Blizzard Entertainment has, in my opinion, managed to deceive its customers and the gaming media at large, and yet somehow managed to garner millions of dollars per year from these unfortunate gullible saps. Ever since its inception, roughly every 2 years, World of Warcraft gets a new expansion. In my opinion, and in the opinion of many other veteran players, these expansions have only got roughly worse and worse with each release, as best illustrated by this famous graph that shows the amount of paying subscribers the game had, peaking in 2010 under the Wrath of the Lich King expansion, and falling until the absolute disaster known as the Warlords of Draenor expansion, whereby Blizzard stopped reporting subscriber numbers simply because it was getting embarrassing to keep telling their shareholders quarter after quarter that their so-called biggest game is dying quicker than the value of the average college degree. So then, as the game came out in 2004, has been out for over 16 years, is full of pay-to-win tat, and hasn't reported its subscriber numbers in well over 5 years, you would expect that the game, surely, must be well and truly dead in the water, right? Well, if you ask the average player familiar with the game, both past and present, it's very likely they would disagree. Just a few days ago at the time of recording, World of Warcraft's 8th expansion, Shadowlands, has just been released. Wait, 8th expansion? Christ, I'm getting old. Take a look at this. World of Warcraft Shadowlands becomes fastest selling PC game of all time. Blizzard Entertainment's latest release achieved sky-shattering sales record, with more units sold through as a first day of launch than any other PC game in history. Today, Blizzard Entertainment announced that as of the first full day of Shadowlands launch, more than 3.7 million units had sold through globally, making it the fastest selling PC game of all time industry-wide.
Wow then, Alex, it seems you were wrong about the game being bad these days. 3.7 million sales on the first day, the fastest selling PC game of all time, industry-wide. You must have no idea what you're talking about.
And people are saying WoW is dead. Lol, nah, WoW is doing way better than before.
WoW is dead, by the way, but I thought WoW died. But no, ladies and gentlemen, this is perhaps the best example of how outright deceitful and desperate Blizzard Entertainment have become as a company. Anyone who read this post would think, as it clearly implies, that Shadowlands has sold 3.7 million units on the first day of its release, which, let's be real here, would be extremely impressive. But this is not actually what this post says at all. You know those awful terms and conditions we're all forced to sign, that basically no one reads, that for all we know could contain a clause that says we have to give them our kidneys? This post, very cleverly I might add, is kind of like that. You see, being a veteran of the game, and somewhat knowledgeable in Activision Blizzard as a company from the perspective of not just a player, but a potential investor, when I saw that Shadowlands had apparently sold more units on the first day than titans such as the Burning Crusade or Wrath of the Lich King expansions from back in the day, I simply couldn't believe it. In the 2000s, World of Warcraft was the game. When a new expansion released, I remember seeing it on the news, mostly about how long the queues were outside of game stores as everyone desperately tried to get their copy.
Midnight video game release had local gamers headed to the electronics store overnight. This time, it was the latest expansion for the wildly popular World of Warcraft series.
So how is it that an expansion, released with relatively little to no fanfare outside of Blizzard's marketing, of a 16-year-old game no less, could possibly sell more copies than when it was a cultural phenomenon? And the answer is, it simply didn't. Let's read this post carefully again and see what it actually says. Blizzard Entertainment's latest release achieved sky-shattering sales record with more units sold through as of first day of launch. Notice how it says as of the first day, not on the first day. This is because Shadowlands was actually available to purchase over a year before it actually came out. It was available for pre-order on the 1st of November 2019 and came out on the 24th of November 2020. A whole 398 days later, and they include all of these pre-order sales in that statistic. So Shadowlands didn't actually sell 3.7 million copies in the first 24 hours, it sold 3.7 million copies in the first 9,552 hours of it being available for purchase. Yeah, it doesn't exactly sound as good, does it? But of course, that's not what the average person got from this post, is it? This blatant corporate wordsmithery tries to make the game seem more popular than it actually is. And this isn't the first time they've done this either. They also did it with the, so I am told, infamously terrible Battle for Azeroth expansion that came out before this one, and the mediocre Legion expansion before that. Even PC Gamer seems to fall for it, which you'd think, being an outlet that describes itself as the global authority on PC games, would at least do some research into what they are reporting, rather than just being Blizzard's corporate mouthpiece. But you know what? Let's give Blizzard this one. Let's pretend that all copies sold even before release day technically count as boastable sales for the first 24 hours, which of course they bloody don't, but let's go along with it for a second. Well, Minecraft was only technically released in November of 2011, and according to Games Radar, in January 2011, Minecraft got 1 million accounts registered, and 6 months later had 10 million accounts registered. So wait a minute, Minecraft had 10 million registered accounts in June 2011, 5 months before its actual release? Even if just half of those registered accounts were sales, it would still be almost double Shadowlands sales, and we still have 5 more months to go. If Blizzard wants to play this game, I'm willing to guarantee that Minecraft factually sold more copies when it was in beta than Shadowlands had pre-orders, and I don't think anyone would be stupid enough to argue with that. Which makes this post even more of a lie than before. But that still begs the question. If the game was more popular back in the day, then how can Blizzard, even counting the pre-orders, still make such a bold claim? I mean, surely the older expansions sold more, and the simple answer is yes and no. Yes, while the expansions that came out when the game was good did in total sell more, the way they were sold was completely different. Back in 2007 and 2008, when the Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King expansions were released, the idea of buying games digitally was almost unheard of. And even if it was, people didn't have the internet connections to support downloading gigabytes of data. Back then, if you wanted to play a new expansion when it released, you had to go to a store for the midnight release, queue up in the freezing cold, buy it physically, downloading the game's data from the disc when you got home, or in WoW's case, discs.
Is you guys sleeping tonight at all?
No.
No sleep tonight?
Probably not.
You gotta work at 6?
Yeah.
But are you going to play all night, or?
There's really no time for sleep at this point.
Oh, okay.
Naturally, this was a process that only the most hardcore of players were willing to do, with many just picking up the game throughout the launch week at some point that fit them. These are all my boxes from back in the day, but you'll notice that they suddenly stop, and that's because, just like everyone else, I stopped buying the games physically from stores and started buying it directly and digitally from Blizzard themselves. And that's a very important transition, as when you bought a game physically, you would usually only do so after the game's released. But when you buy a game digitally, you can do so many months, or in this case over a year, in advance. And in fact, Blizzard even give you motivation to do so. Players who pre-ordered the deluxe versions of Shadowlands, and yes, there are deluxe versions, actually got rewarded with some worthless pay-to-win tat that you could get before the expansion even came out, such as Heroic Edition Contents, Level 120 Character Boost, available on pre-purchase, Ensorceleleleleleleleld Everworm Mount, which grants access to a quest line that awards the vestments of the Eternal Traveler Transmogrification set. Epic Edition Contents. All content from the Heroic Edition. Anima Wormling Pet, Wraithchill Cosmetic Weapon Effect, Eternal Traveler's Hearthstone, and 30 days of game time. And that's why Blizzard can get away with this blatant bollocks, as they've only started making these claims since digital has taken over, which obviously artificially inflates numbers, as even if less people in total are playing, more people than ever are pre-ordering. They twisted the truth to fit the narrative they are trying to paint, and that narrative is that the game is doing better than ever, when it clearly isn't. But luckily, thanks to the corpo bullshit, we can roughly determine how many actual subscribers the game has today. Shadowlands has, as admitted by Blizzard, 3.7 million subscribers at launch. Now, going off the consumer trends of past expansions, it seems that they peak at release, only to falter off after the first month. Therefore, it can be assumed that Shadowlands will peak at its current 3.7 million subscribers, and then fall down to a number roughly in the ballpark of 2 to 3 million in the coming months. For reference, the last time they ever reported actual subscriber numbers, they had over 5 million, and that was at that expansion's worst reported number. That means Shadowlands has less subscribers in total at its best than Warlords of Draenor had at its worst. Well, worst reported anyway. So no, WoW isn't doing better than ever, it's doing worse than it was back in 2005. The subscriber chart correlates with that of the typical product lifecycle. We have the rise, the peak and the fall, clear as crystal. And by the way, no, these numbers haven't just come out of my ass. The ones marked with the yellow arrows, Blizzard has openly admitted themselves, indirectly. I would bet money that this subscriber chart is accurate, and I would openly challenge Blizzard to release their actual subscription chart, and I guarantee it would look just like this. But Blizzard didn't make this post for players. Players care about dungeons, raids, battlegrounds, you know, the actual game. The only people who have an interest in subscriber numbers are those who have an emotional or financial interest in the game, which is not the average player. No, they made this for investors. A common phrase that Blizzard likes to use is so-called player engagement. Notice how they say, player engagement in World of Warcraft reaches highest levels in a decade. Well, what the hell does that mean? They've been using this in their quarterly reports for a while too. Reach and engagement were particularly strong. Increased engagement in modern WoW. World of Warcraft's reach and engagement once again increased. Franchise engagement is at its highest level. Active paying subscribers is quite a done deal statistic. It's the amount of people who feel as if the game is worth paying for on a monthly basis. Player engagement, however, could literally be translated as anything. I managed to find this forum post from a few years back, which I think hit the nail on the head. It reads, "Player engagement metric is bad for WoW." Yeah, we've all heard Blizzard use this phrase, and it sounds good in theory, but it's actually very harmful and exacerbates problems already existing in WoW. Once upon a time, Blizzard released sub count. That's a pretty fair metric. You want more players coming in than are leaving, if not an equal amount. Then we started losing subs, and more subs, and more subs, so subs became too embarrassing to show shareholders. In response, Blizzard abandoned that metric and started using player engagement. What ends up happening is that the game's design is not so much about gaining players, but to string the existing players along to keep engaging. This is very bad. The game feels devoid of meaningful tasks that attract people, yet full of little chores we gotta muddle through. I log in feeling like there's both nothing to do and too much to do, and if you decide you don't want to do any of it and unsub, well, you're no longer a player whose engagement is being recorded, so the average player engagement won't go down. And that is exactly the point. Ever since the Warlords of Draenor expansion, the game has been filled with these horrendous mission tables, whereby every few hours, the game expects you to come on and give your followers missions, and of course rewards you if you do. This, I imagine, is the metric Blizzard are using when they say player engagement. How many times you come on and do meaningless shit like this. And when you eventually grow a brain and realise that you're playing Farmville, you quit, and your player engagement is no longer recorded, as you're no longer a player. Thus, player engagement can always be high, so long as the game is designed around accommodating it, which of course it is. It's literally a carrot on a stick. Another great example of such psychological manipulation has to be the Titan forging system. When defeating raid bosses, players can be rewarded with gear. In the past, that was the end of the story. You killed the boss, got the gear, great job. But with Titan forging, gear had a very small chance of being even better than usual, which made it borderline impossible to get best in slot gear, as the chance of you getting a full Titan forged set was unlikely to say the least. What was likely, however, was that you'd raid as much as possible in order to increase the chance you'll get Titan forged gear, also known as increasing player engagement. Now, I am told on good authority that the Titan forging system has since been removed. Great, only took them around half a decade. Still doesn't change the fact that in order to understand how gearing even works, you're expected to read a half-an-hour long essay. And I suppose that's a fundamental point. World of Warcraft is not a game designed first and foremost around giving its players a good time, not anymore anyway. It's designed around the psychological manipulation of its players, in order to impress shareholders with a manipulated statistic, just like the one they used earlier. As, let's face it, they don't have any real success to talk about anymore, at least not in their eyes. In the world we live in today, corporations are under the illusion that endless and infinite growth is actually possible, and they will do anything in their desperation when it becomes clear that their time is long past, in order to make it at least seem as if they are. When games companies shift their focus away from pleasing their players to pleasing their investors, what you get is soulless empty shells like the modern day version of World of Warcraft. If Blizzard just went back to the way they were before, where they tried to make their games to please people, to entertain people, and make these huge epic worlds that people could immerse themselves in for hours, their investors would be pleased because they would be raking in the money. But no, instead, just like a normal typical corporation, they would rather make a little bit of short-term quick profit than rake in the big bucks in the long term. Because that's how corporations work. But you want to know what the saddest part about all this is? This video will likely get around 20 views, 3 likes, 1 dislike, and no one will ever properly know of these injustices, because good luck posting this to somewhere like Reddit or MMO Champion, where the average WoW players actually lurk, as it will likely be instantly removed for, quote, self-promotion. Because apparently, even after editing a high-quality and informative video for 20 plus hours, you aren't allowed to show it to people. Because, well, don't fucking ask me. But even if you somehow manage to get past the Gestapo moderators, the vast majority of WoW players these days are such absolute 2 IQ'd monkeys that they would rather defend a multi-billion-dollar corporation that doesn't give a shit about them, and instead insult me, someone who has nothing to gain from making this whatsoever, apart from making you more consumer aware about how you're getting fucked. Because that's the world we live in today, folks. Don't ask questions. Consume product and wait for next product.